Hey everyone! Tonight we're stepping behind the grand walls of ancient palaces, not to see kings or queens, but to uncover the secret signals servants used to navigate hidden dangers and silent power plays. These quiet codes shaped palace life in ways you'd never expect. Messages passed without words, warnings disguised as everyday actions. Before we dive in, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these deep dives. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. It's incredible to connect with you all across the globe. Now, get cozy, dim the lights, maybe turn on a gentle fan, and let's slip quietly into the world of secret palace signals. Folding a towel twice to summon a noble without speaking, imagine yourself standing in a vast medieval hall, the heavy wooden beams stretching above you, the floor smooth with polished stone, the air faintly scented with beeswax from freshly polished furniture and the lingering aroma of wood smoke from distant hearths. It is a place governed not by spoken commands, but by gestures and silent signals, where subtlety was the language of power and communication. One such subtle signal was the simple act of folding a towel twice and placing it on a bench. To a casual observer, it might seem a mundane detail, hardly worthy of note. Yet, in the world of aristocratic households and royal courts, this quiet linen maneuver carried weighty significance. It was a way to summon a noble or a trusted servant without uttering a single word, a whisper of authority conveyed through fabric and arrangement. The act of folding a towel twice to summon a noble without speaking was more than a convenience. It was a carefully cultivated ritual embedded in the social fabric of elite life. Imagine the servants, ever watchful and attuned to these silent signals, knowing precisely what a neatly folded cloth signified. Their eyes scanned the great halls, not just for spoken instructions, but for these subtle cues, a folded towel, a placed goblet, or a shifted chair, that spoke volumes in the delicate dance of courtly communication. This silent summons was born from necessity and shaped by social etiquette. The great halls of castles and manors were places where discretion was often as important as command. A loud call might be seen as rude or draw unwanted attention, while written messages were too slow for urgent needs. Instead, folded linens served as a secret code, understood by those who served within these walls. To truly understand this practice, it helps to envision the daily rhythm of a noble household. Each morning, the servants moved quietly, their steps muffled on stone floors, attending to duties that spanned from tending fires to preparing meals, polishing silver to arranging the Lord's chambers. They had learned to read the unspoken language of the household, the rise of an eyebrow, the tap of a foot, or, as in this case, the position of a towel. The towel, a simple piece of linen, was more than a household necessity. It became a messenger. Folded once, it might indicate one request. Folded twice, a more urgent or specific command. Placed on a bench in the great hall, it was an unmistakable call for a chamberlain, a steward, or even the Lord himself to approach. Why such an indirect method? The answer lies in the complex hierarchies and codes of conduct that governed medieval and early modern elite life. Speaking aloud to summon someone could disrupt ongoing conversations, reveal confidential intentions, or offend the sensibilities of others present. A folded towel, placed with intention, was silent and discreet, allowing the flow of social interaction to remain uninterrupted. Moreover, it was a sign of respect to communicate subtly. Imagine a noble lady seated at the end of a long hall, wishing to request the presence of her steward. Instead of raising her voice, which might be perceived as brusque or unladylike, she signaled with a folded towel. The steward, recognizing the sign, would quietly approach, ready to attend to her wishes. This exchange maintained the decorum expected within these refined spaces. This custom also reflects the broader importance of nonverbal communication in historical contexts. Across cultures and eras, gestures, postures, and objects often served as proxies for words, especially in environments where direct speech was limited by status, gender, or etiquette. The folded towel is just one example within a vast repertoire of signs that conveyed meaning without sound. Interestingly, this practice also illustrates how material objects assumed roles far beyond their practical uses. Linen, typically associated with cleanliness and comfort, was repurposed as a tool of command and connection. The tactile quality of the towel, its texture, weight, and the crispness of its folds, became part of the communication itself, signaling attention to detail and intention. One might also consider how servants trained to interpret these signals. Their attentiveness to these subtle cues was essential to the smooth functioning of the household. Failure to notice or respond appropriately could lead to misunderstanding or delay, potentially embarrassing their masters. Thus, servants became experts in the silent language of folds and placements, moving through the halls with quiet purpose. As we move from the Great Hall to the chambers beyond, we find similar methods of silent communication at play. Letters and notes were common, but so too were visual markers, folded cloths, arranged objects, and even the direction of a fan or candle that conveyed messages discreetly. These signs allowed the household to function with a graceful balance of authority and discretion. Beyond the immediate household, such silent signals also played a role in the broader political and social networks of the time. Nobles attending court or diplomatic gatherings relied on gestures and signs to navigate complex social protocols. A folded handkerchief, a bowed head, or a subtle touch might communicate allegiance, consent, or warning without words. Returning to the humble towel, we can appreciate it as a symbol of this intricate dance of communication. The folds were not random but deliberate, carrying meaning in their precise arrangement. Folding twice was a clear, unambiguous sign, simple yet effective. Imagine yourself observing this silent exchange unfold repeatedly throughout a day in a noble household. The steady rhythm of unseen commands delivered through linen, the quiet responses of those who understood, and the seamless flow of activity this allowed. It is a reminder that much of history is held in these small moments and objects, moments where silence speaks louder than words. In this way, the folded towel stands as a testament to the ingenuity of communication before the age of instant messaging, telephones, or even widespread literacy. It speaks to a world where the fabric of social interaction was woven from gestures, objects, and shared understanding, a world where a simple fold could summon a noble without a single word being spoken. Carrying a lit lantern in daylight to warn of danger nearby, imagine yourself stepping into the quiet corridors of a medieval manor or a grand castle on a clear midday. The sun pours through narrow windows, casting soft, golden patches onto the stone floors, illuminating tapestries woven with faded threads of ancient stories. Amidst this calm, you notice something unusual: a servant walking steadily down the hall, holding aloft a small lantern, its flame flickering gently in the bright daylight. This sight would have been far from ordinary in the historical rhythms of castle life. The glow of a lit lantern in broad daylight was a deliberate, practiced signal, one that spoke quietly but urgently of danger, tension, or conflict unfolding behind closed doors. In those days, communication within the walls of large estates, castles, or manors relied heavily on subtle visual cues and coded actions, rather than loud proclamations or messengers. The carrying of a lit lantern at midday was a known signal among servants and residents alike. It was a discreet yet unmistakable sign that something was amiss, that a threat or a dispute was taking place in some part of the household or fortress. This simple act instructed observers to give the corridors and certain rooms a wide berth, to avoid curiosity or interruption until the matter had been resolved. Imagine the weight of such a gesture: a small flame held high, carrying a message that demanded respect and caution without uttering a single word. To understand why this practice held such importance, it helps to picture the environment and social structure of medieval and early modern households. These estates were often bustling microcosms of society, with complex hierarchies and intricate rules of conduct. Servants, guards, and noble residents all moved through a shared space layered with expectations and protocol. Privacy was both rare and fiercely protected, especially when tensions or conflicts arose, be it between rival nobles, family members, or visiting dignitaries. Loud disturbances were discouraged, not only to maintain order but also to prevent unnecessary panic or gossip. In this context, the lantern became a kind of quiet guardian of secrecy, a flickering beacon that marked danger while preserving the solemnity of the household's routines. The practice likely had practical origins. Before the advent of modern communication systems, people relied on signs and symbols embedded in daily life to convey messages. A lit lantern indoors, especially during daylight hours, was an anomaly that naturally drew attention. But among those in the know, it was a deliberate, coded gesture. Unlike the open ringing of bells or shouted warnings, the lantern's light was an understated alert, visible enough to signal caution, yet unobtrusive enough to avoid alarming residents or guests unnecessarily. Servants carrying these lanterns moved with purposeful calm, their presence a signal to fellow workers and others that they should clear hallways, stay out of certain chambers, or prepare quietly for the resolution of the situation. Imagine, then, the sensory backdrop to such moments. The air might be tinged faintly with the scent of burning oil or beeswax from the lantern's flame, a warm and steady presence amid the cooler stone walls. Footsteps would echo softly on the cold floors, hushed whispers might drift behind closed doors, and the gentle sway of tapestries stirred by the castle's draft could create a subtle dance of shadows and light. The rhythm of life continued around the edges of this silent warning. A cook tending to pots, a guard pacing outside, nobles speaking in restrained tones, each participant aware, if only subconsciously, of the flickering signal that something lay beyond the usual daily flow. Historical records, correspondence, and household manuals from the medieval and early modern periods hint at such practices, underscoring the importance of subtlety and discretion in aristocratic life. The very architecture of castles and manors, with their labyrinthine corridors, guarded chambers, and private galleries, encouraged the use of nonverbal communication to maintain social order. The carrying of a lit lantern during daylight was part of this silent language, an unspoken protocol that allowed the household to navigate conflict, illness, or other disturbances with a measure of decorum and control. This signal could have been employed for a variety of reasons. Perhaps it warned of an illness afflicting a member of the household, a quarrel between influential figures, or a more serious threat such as an intruder or unrest. Whatever the cause, the lantern's flame became a symbol of the unseen turmoil, gently advising caution without revealing the nature or severity of the situation. Imagine the careful discipline required of servants entrusted with this task, to carry the lantern steadily, to avoid drawing undue attention, and to respect the weight of the message they bore. The social dynamics surrounding such signals also reveal much about the daily lives of those within these walls. Servants were often the unseen eyes and ears of the household, moving between spaces, carrying news, messages, and occasionally warnings like the lantern's flame. Their knowledge of the household's secrets and rhythms gave them a unique position of responsibility and trust. Imagine the subtle hierarchy of knowledge that this signal represented, those who understood its meaning and those who only glimpsed the light without full comprehension. This division underscores the delicate balance of power, secrecy, and communication within noble estates. As the flame of the lantern flickered steadily, so too did the delicate equilibrium of the household's atmosphere. The quiet warning allowed tensions to simmer out of sight, conflicts to resolve behind heavy oak doors, and dangers to be managed without disrupting the broader calm. It was a reminder that even in places designed for grandeur and ceremony, life often contained hidden struggles and moments of quiet caution. Imagine the relief when the lantern was finally extinguished, signaling the end of the threat, and the household could return to its steady rhythms, the corridors once again free for the footsteps of daily life. This practice, while rooted in a distant past, resonates with the timeless human need for discreet communication and the management of shared spaces. The lit lantern in daylight was more than a tool for illumination. It was a symbol woven into the fabric of social interaction, a gesture of care and warning wrapped in the quiet flicker of a flame. Imagine carrying such a lantern yourself, feeling the warmth of its light and the weight of its message, moving slowly through sunlit halls as the world around you holds its breath in respectful silence. In the end, this small, deliberate act reveals much about the complexities of life behind the imposing stone walls, how people navigated danger and discord with restraint, how signals and silence intertwined, and how the flicker of a flame could speak volumes without a single word. Imagine yourself walking beside that servant, sharing the quiet knowledge carried by a simple lantern, a timeless reminder that even in the brightest daylight, shadows can linger, and caution is often best expressed in the gentlest light. Lacing apron strings in a crossed pattern to denote surveillance, imagine yourself stepping quietly into the bustling heart of a grand medieval household. The kitchen. A large, warm room filled with the smells of wood smoke mingled with herbs hanging from rafters, the clatter of pots and pans, and the soft murmur of servants moving carefully in their routines. Yet amid the steady rhythm of daily tasks, there is a subtle, almost imperceptible code woven into the fabric of this world. It's not spoken aloud. Instead, it is silently carried in the way a maid's apron is laced, specifically tied in a crossed or X-shaped pattern. This simple gesture, the crisscross of apron strings at the back, functioned as a discreet and effective signal, an unspoken language of alertness and caution. When a maid fastened her apron with crossed strings, it quietly indicated that the household master was watching. Not just casually, but from a hidden gallery or a concealed vantage point, where eyes scrutinized the movement of every individual in the kitchen. This was surveillance, a careful monitoring cloaked in everyday tasks, a reminder that within these walls, the dance of appearances and obedience was ongoing and unyielding. The crossed apron strings were more than a fashion choice or a functional way to tie a garment. They were a visual code recognized by all who shared the space. When this subtle sign appeared, even the busiest kitchens fell into a measured silence. The rhythm of chopping, stirring, and washing slowed, each servant gauging their movements with an acute awareness of the master's gaze. It was a moment when the normal ebb and flow of work paused, replaced by a quiet tension that required careful navigation. This practice, though simple, speaks volumes about the intricate social dynamics and the mechanisms of control embedded in medieval households. The Great Manor was not merely a home but a stage where power was enacted and reinforced continuously. Surveillance was woven into daily life not through overt commands but through nuanced gestures and silent cues, such as the way an apron was tied. Imagine the texture of the linen, soft and worn from frequent washing, the feel of the strings pulled taut as they crossed each other, the slight pressure across the back signaling more than just practicality. The maid tying her apron knew the weight of this gesture, an unspoken message transmitted without words, understood by all and impossible to ignore. The idea of surveillance in medieval households might seem surprising. When we think of such scrutiny, we often picture modern technology, cameras, or electronic monitoring. Yet, before these inventions, people devised their own systems of observation, crafted out of necessity and the desire to maintain order, hierarchy, and control. This silent language of crossed laces was part of a broader culture of subtlety and discretion. It reveals a world where power was exercised not just by commands shouted in grand halls but by quiet signals in kitchens and corridors. These gestures kept the social fabric intact, ensuring that even in moments when supervision seemed absent, it was very much present. Consider how this affects the lives of the servants. The constant awareness that their every action might be observed, judged, or reported shaped their daily experience. The crossed apron strings became a reminder of the invisible presence, an emblem of the watchful eyes that never fully rested. Yet, life in the manor was a complex mixture of hardship and community, duty and occasional respite. Between the moments of surveillance, the kitchen would fill again with the lively sounds of work and conversation. The smells of fresh bread baking or stew simmering would comfort those who labored there, offering small reprieves from the unrelenting demands of their roles. The master's hidden gallery itself was a fascinating space, often a small, shadowed room or balcony overlooking key areas. From here, a lord or lady could observe the household's pulse, making decisions and asserting authority without the need for direct confrontation. This architectural feature was designed precisely for such oversight, blending invisibility with presence. As you imagine yourself standing in that kitchen, you might hear the soft rustling of linen, the faint tension in the crossed apron strings, and the subtle shift in atmosphere as the master's watchful eyes turn toward this domain. It is a moment suspended between routine and alertness, a quiet signal embedded in daily life. The crossed apron lacing is but one example of many such covert systems of communication and control. Across history, people have found ways to convey messages silently, whether for protection, warning, or assertion of power. In medieval households, these signs became essential threads in the fabric of social order. In the muted colors of the kitchen, earthy stone floors, soot-darkened beams, the soft glow of candlelight, the cross strings stand out as a quiet emblem. They tell a story of watchfulness, discipline, and the subtle ways in which authority permeated every corner of life. Imagine the hands that tied those strings, steady but deliberate, aware of the eyes unseen but always felt. Each knot tightened carried a message, the master watches. Each servant who saw it responded with measured steps and careful glances, shaping their behavior to fit the silent script. In reflecting on this, we see how much of history's texture lies not only in grand events but in these small, quiet signals. The crossed apron strings remind us that surveillance is not merely a modern invention but a persistent thread in human social structures. So, as the kitchen's rhythm resumes, the signs fade until the next moment of caution. Yet, the memory of that silent code lingers, a gentle reminder of how, even in the humblest tasks, the rhythms of power and watchfulness beat steadily on. Knocking 3 times on a larder door to announce safe passage. Imagine yourself standing just beyond the heavy oak door of a grand medieval kitchen, the scent of herbs and fresh bread lingering faintly in the air behind you. Beyond this portal lies the larder, a cool, dimly lit chamber tucked away from the bustle of the household. A place where provisions were stored, secrets kept, and movements closely guarded. In the daily rhythm of medieval servitude, this larder was more than just a pantry. It was a guarded threshold between safety and uncertainty. To those who worked within these sprawling manors, the larder was a place where trust and caution intertwined. Its door, thick and unyielding, served as a barrier not only to preserve food but to protect the delicate social order humming throughout the household. Imagine the faint echo of knuckles against wood, the steady, measured rap of 3 knocks. This simple, coded gesture carried weight far beyond the sound itself. It was a silent message, a quiet assurance that the path beyond was clear, that no eyes lurked in shadows, no threats waited unseen. This triple knock was part of an unspoken language among the servants, a subtle system of signals honed through years of necessity. In the complex choreography of castle life, where mistrust could lead to conflict or suspicion, such codes offered a fragile thread of safety. Picture the servant waiting patiently outside the larder door, fingers poised, heart steadying, before delivering this rhythmic pattern. Each knock, precise and deliberate, was a word in a secret conversation, a call to move forward or hold back, an assurance that the world beyond was momentarily safe. The larder itself was a cool, shadowed chamber lined with shelves heavy with earthenware pots, wicker baskets, and salted meats. The scent inside was a quiet blend of preserved fruit, cured herbs, and the faint dampness that accompanied underground cellars. These rooms were crucial to the household's survival, storing perishable goods safely away from the heat and chaos above. Yet, their very seclusion made them spaces where intrigue could quietly unfold. Servants moved carefully here, aware that even a single misplaced glance or a misstep could lead to whispers or worse. In this quiet domain, the triple knock became more than a practical tool. It was a subtle assertion of control. A servant entering without the proper signal risked confrontation or suspicion, while those who mastered these silent communications navigated the household's complexities with a kind of invisible grace. The rhythm of their lives depended on such delicate gestures, small acts that shaped the flow of a day, the balance of power, and the fragile peace that kept the household running. To understand the importance of this coded knock, consider the broader context of medieval service. Life in a great manor was a constant interplay between hierarchy and hidden networks. Servants were bound not only by duty but by an intricate web of alliances, rivalries, and whispered secrets. The kitchens and storage rooms, removed from the eyes of nobility, were fertile grounds for clandestine messages and quiet observations. The triple knock, simple as it was, carried the weight of these unspoken negotiations, a way to announce presence without invitation, to declare safety without words. Beyond the larder door, the household moved in a rhythm all its own. The cooks prepared meals with practiced efficiency, the chambermaids maintained silent vigilance, and the footmen balanced deference with alertness. The triple knock echoed faintly through these corridors, a reminder of the unseen rules guiding their motions. Imagine the gentle pause that followed the knock. A moment of stillness as those within acknowledged the signal, granting passage or withholding it. This was the subtle dance of trust and caution that defined the daily life of service. The tradition of coded knocks was not unique to larders but found echoes throughout medieval architecture. From hidden passages behind tapestries to concealed stairways leading to servants' quarters, signals and signs ensured communication without exposure. These silent languages offered protection, preserving the fragile social order in places where even a glance could betray intentions. The triple knock on the larder door stands as a poignant example of how the unseen mechanics of household life maintain security and discretion amid a world often fraught with uncertainty. It is worth reflecting on how such a modest act, 3 measured taps on wood, could carry so much meaning. In an era when spoken words were often watched and overheard, silence became a powerful tool. The triple knock was a whisper in the noise, a gentle code threading through the architecture of the manor, binding servants together in a shared understanding. Imagine the comfort this small ritual might have offered, an assurance of safety in a place otherwise shadowed and uncertain. As you let your thoughts drift back through time, consider the lives shaped by these subtle signals. The servant who learned to recognize the knock, the one who delivered it with calm certainty, the many who depended on its message to navigate their world. Each knock echoed not only through the wood but through the rhythm of daily life, a steady pulse beneath the grander dramas of lords and ladies, battles and banquets. This triple knock also serves as a reminder of the broader social structures that shaped medieval existence. In a world defined by hierarchy and duty, every gesture, every signal, carried weight. The larder's door was more than a physical boundary. It was a threshold between order and chaos, trust and suspicion, safety and danger. Within that boundary, life unfolded in a measured, delicate balance. As the seasons turned and the years passed, such rituals continued, adapting quietly with the shifting tides of history. While the grand halls saw the march of armies and the passage of royalty, it was in these quieter spaces, the larders, the kitchens, the servants' corridors, where the everyday stories of survival and subtlety played out. The triple knock remains a symbol of that hidden world, a testament to the invisible codes that guided lives lived largely out of sight. So, imagine yourself once more at that sturdy door, feeling the weight of the moment as your knuckles rattle softly against the wood 3 times. In that simple act lies a world of meaning, a signal, a safeguard, a promise that the path ahead is clear. It is a small ritual, yet one that carries the steady heartbeat of a household, a community bound together by silence, trust, and the unspoken language of survival. Placing a sprig of rosemary on a windowsill to mark morning, imagine yourself stepping quietly through a narrow village street, where the air carries the soft, lingering fragrance of herbs and freshly turned earth. On a small, modest windowsill rests a delicate sprig of rosemary, its deep green needles shimmering faintly in the muted daylight. This simple gesture, unassuming and silent, speaks volumes to anyone who notices. It marks a space touched by sorrow, a household enveloped in mourning, inviting respect and a gentle lowering of voices as one passes by. Throughout history, people have sought subtle, nonverbal ways to communicate complex social messages, codes woven into the fabric of daily life, delicate signals that speak to shared understanding without spoken words. The placing of rosemary on windowsills to mark morning was one such quiet custom, a practice that melded symbolism, nature, and social ritual in a way that both preserved privacy and invited communal empathy. Rosemary's connection to remembrance and mourning stretches back centuries and spans many cultures. The herb itself carries a fresh, woody aroma, crisp and invigorating yet somehow soothing, a fragrance that lingers in the memory as much as in the air. Ancient civilizations recognized rosemary as a symbol of fidelity and remembrance. The Greeks and Romans used it in wedding ceremonies to bind couples, while also associating it with the gods of memory and the afterlife. In medieval Europe, rosemary's bittersweet scent became a fragrant emblem of mourning, placed beside the departed or near their homes to honor the invisible presence of grief. Imagine now the slow rhythms of a village day in medieval or early modern times. Life is dictated by natural cycles and the steady patterns of work and rest. People move carefully, their eyes attuned to these small signs. Linen hung a certain way, a candle burning low in a window, or a sprig of rosemary resting quietly on a sill. Each signal carries meaning, part of a language spoken through subtlety and observation. When fresh rosemary appears on a windowsill, it becomes a marker not just of grief but of communal respect. Those who pass by instinctively soften their voices, slow their footsteps, and allow the unspoken sorrow space to exist without intrusion. This practice reflects a delicate balance between public and private sorrow. Grief, profound and deeply personal, demands acknowledgement. Yet, in many times and places, mourning was also governed by strict social conventions that shaped how loss could be expressed. Open wailing or prolonged displays of emotion in public were often discouraged or restricted by custom or religious dictate. The rosemary sprig, then, becomes a quiet sentinel, standing watch in the threshold between the world of the living and the intimate realm of private sorrow. The presence of rosemary on the sill also held practical meaning within the community's social fabric. It was a signal to neighbors and passers-by that they should tread lightly to avoid bustling or loud conversation near the home. In an age when homes were tightly woven into village life, where news and support traveled on foot and by word of mouth, these nonverbal cues helped preserve dignity for the bereaved. Imagine the hush that falls over a street as one approaches such a house, the normal cadence of daily chatter replaced by thoughtful silence, a shared acknowledgement that this day was shadowed by loss. Beyond its symbolic role, rosemary's use in mourning also entwined with broader beliefs about protection and the spiritual world. People believed that the scent of rosemary could ward off evil spirits or prevent the soul of the deceased from lingering restlessly among the living. It was a kind of fragrant barrier, creating a sacred space around the home, a garden of memory and protection. This belief added layers to the simple act of placing rosemary on a windowsill, turning it into a ritual act infused with quiet hope and solemn reverence. In some regions, rosemary was also brought to funerals or woven into garlands and wreaths that adorned the resting places of the dead. The herb's evergreen nature, its persistent green through winter's cold, served as a subtle reminder of endurance, the possibility of life beyond the immediate sorrow. This symbolism was comforting, suggesting that while physical presence fades, memory and love endure, held fast like the rosemary's fragrant needles. If you imagine the house itself during this time of mourning, the rosemary on the sill becomes part of a larger tableau of quiet rituals. Within, the household's rhythm slows. Doors may remain closed, meals might be simpler or delayed. Visitors, if welcomed at all, speak softly and tread lightly, careful not to disturb the fragile atmosphere. Candles burn low, and perhaps soft music or the steady ticking of a clock marks the passage of hours. The scent of rosemary mingles with that of smoldering hearth fires and damp stone walls, creating an environment thick with both memory and reverence. These customs were not uniform across all communities, but their essence resonates deeply. They reveal how people have long sought to articulate the inexpressible, loss, grief, remembrance, through the language of everyday life. Such practices offer a window into the ways society negotiates the presence of death, balancing the need for personal sorrow with the unspoken contract of community care. The sprig of rosemary on the windowsill, then, stands as a quiet testament. It is a humble sign, yet one rich with meaning, a fragrant emblem of love and memory, a marker of shared humanity that invites both distance and closeness. It reminds us that even in silence, there is communication, even in absence, presence, and even in sorrow, a subtle grace that guides the rhythm of human connection. As the day turns to dusk and shadows lengthen along the village street, the rosemary still rests there, catching the last light of day. Passers-by glance toward it, their pace slowing, voices dropping as if carried away on the soft evening breeze. In this gentle moment, the cycle of life, loss, and remembrance is quietly honored, not with loud lament, but with the steady, enduring language of nature and ritual. Imagine yourself once more walking past that windowsill, the scent of rosemary fresh in the air, the world moving softly around you. In this small gesture, history whispers to you, a reminder that beneath the surface of ordinary life lie the currents of memory, respect, and the shared experience of grief that connects generations across time. Holding a broom upright in a corner to summon immediate aid, imagine yourself in the quiet, shadowed spaces behind the grandeur of a stately home or castle, where servants move with practiced discretion, aware that every gesture, every object, can carry hidden meaning. Among these subtle signs was one simple yet urgent signal: holding a broom upright in a corner. To the untrained eye, it might look like a mere act of tidying, or even an accidental resting place for cleaning tools, but within the household, it was a silent alarm, a call for immediate aid. This upright broom was a discreet beacon, a lifeline quietly broadcast without disturbing the delicate social atmosphere or alerting guests to any unfolding trouble. Imagine a servant carefully positioning the broom upright against the wall, deliberately choosing a secluded corner just out of sight. This act, though silent and seemingly mundane, sent an unmistakable message to other staff. Urgent assistance is needed, now. The brilliance of this silent summons lay in its subtlety. The world behind grand doors was often fraught with pressures, delicate negotiations, or precarious situations demanding swift but discreet response. Loud calls for help might disrupt conversations or cause embarrassment for the noble family or their visitors. The upright broom circumvented this, preserving the decorum and calm veneer of the household. Within the rhythm of daily life, servants became attuned to such silent signals. Their eyes, trained by experience, scanned the corners and corridors for this telltale sign. Upon spotting a broom standing upright where it ought not, they understood immediately that something required their urgent attention. Without hesitation, they moved swiftly but quietly to investigate, ready to support, intervene, or carry out necessary tasks. Consider the range of situations that might prompt this silent plea for help. Perhaps a guest had taken ill suddenly, requiring immediate but discreet assistance. Or a fragile object was in danger of being dropped or damaged during a busy event. Maybe a servant had encountered a troublesome issue, an argument, a spill, or a hidden problem that needed swift resolution away from prying eyes. The upright broom became a versatile, low-key signal bridging the gap between urgency and discretion. This practice reveals much about the inner workings of noble households and their staff. It highlights the complexity of their communication networks, where spoken words were often less effective or less appropriate than silent signs. It also emphasizes the staff's reliance on mutual trust and shared understanding, their ability to interpret even the simplest gesture as a call to coordinated action. The tactile element of the broom, its handle balanced carefully, the brush resting against the stone or wooden floor, made it an ideal tool for this purpose. Unlike a note or a whispered message, it required no literacy or voice. The meaning was encoded in its placement and posture. It was a physical symbol of urgency, clear to those in the know but invisible to others. Imagine the scene unfolding. A servant, sensing an immediate need but mindful of discretion, pauses briefly to wedge the broom upright in an unassuming corner. The broom stands as a silent sentinel, signaling allies without disrupting the carefully maintained peace of the room. Another servant, glancing across the hall, notices and quickens their pace, stepping quietly toward the source of the signal. Together, they move to address the delicate situation before it grows more complicated. Such silent communication systems were essential to the smooth running of large households. They ensured that problems were managed efficiently, discreetly, and without unnecessary alarm. The upright broom, simple and unassuming, exemplifies how ordinary objects took on extraordinary roles in the choreography of daily life behind the scenes. This custom also reminds us how the social order of the time demanded control over appearances. Noble families were keen to maintain an image of calm, elegance, and command, even when chaos might threaten just beyond the polished surface. The staff, skilled in reading these signs, helped uphold this illusion, quietly managing crises through gestures as subtle as the upright broom. Moreover, this method underscores the resourcefulness of those who lived and worked in such environments. Without the modern conveniences of technology, servants relied on creativity and shared codes to communicate complex needs. The broom, a simple household implement, became a vital tool in this secret language, blending utility with urgency. Envision the textures and sounds of this silent exchange. The smooth handle of the broom pressed gently but firmly against the corner, the faint scrape of bristles on stone, the quiet footsteps of aides responding swiftly, their faces composed yet alert. The household hums with unspoken coordination, a dance of care and caution choreographed by gestures like these. In this way, the upright broom stands as a symbol of a hidden world where silence spoke volumes, where ordinary objects carried extraordinary meaning, and where the rhythm of life was maintained not only by spoken word but by the quiet language of those who served. It reminds us that history is often found in these small, almost invisible moments. Moments where a broom held upright in a corner can summon immediate aid, preserving order and dignity without a sound. Arranging breadcrumbs in a circle to signal secret conversations, imagine yourself stepping quietly into the bustling kitchens and servants' quarters of a medieval manor, where the air is thick with the warm, yeasty scent of fresh bread mingling with the faint trace of herbs and wood smoke. Here, in these modest yet vital spaces, the rhythm of daily life unfolds in careful, practiced motions. Pots are stirred, fires tended, and messages passed in subtle, silent ways. Among these coded signs, one gesture stands out for its quiet delicacy and deep respect. A simple circle of breadcrumbs arranged near a plate, a humble yet potent symbol that secret conversations had just taken place, and that discretion was paramount. This delicate ring of crumbs was far more than accidental spillage or careless debris. In the intricate social world of medieval households, where trust and secrecy often determined survival, such a subtle sign served a vital purpose. Imagine a young page or a kitchen maid, aware of whispered plans exchanged behind closed doors, stepping away and deliberately scattering a small circle of crumbs by a plate or on a tray. To any who noticed, fellow servants or trusted allies, this ring silently declared that the words spoken here were private, meant to remain confined within a trusted circle. Why breadcrumbs? Bread was a staple, a symbol of sustenance and everyday life, and crumbs were plentiful but fragile, easily overlooked by casual eyes yet impossible to ignore for those in the know. The ring shape, with its unbroken curve, evoked a boundary, an invisible fence drawn to protect the sanctity of conversation. This simple arrangement held a powerful message. What was said here must not travel beyond these crumbs, respecting both the speakers and the delicate balance of household dynamics. Picture the scene. A humble servant, with hands dusted faintly with flour, pauses near the kitchen table after a whispered exchange. Carefully, almost ritualistically, they scatter the crumbs in a neat circle, their movements unhurried and deliberate, as if tracing a sacred boundary. The crumbs catch the light filtering through a small window, casting soft shadows on the worn wood surface, the faint crackle of hearth fire humming in the background. This act, gentle and unassuming, conveys a weighty trust and an unspoken understanding among those who share the household's inner workings. The ring of crumbs also serves as a social contract, a silent agreement that binds those present to loyalty and discretion. In a time when gossip could undermine reputations and stir unrest, and when a misplaced word might lead to punishment or exile, such signals became essential. Even the lowest-ranking pages understood the importance of this sign. A circle of crumbs was a boundary not to be crossed, a respectful marker that shielded secrets from careless ears. Imagine the discipline required to observe and honor this unspoken code amid the hustle and bustle of castle life. This practice was not isolated but woven into a broader tapestry of subtle, nonverbal communication that permeated medieval households. From folded towels signaling urgent summons to the lit lanterns warning of unseen dangers, the ring of breadcrumbs was part of a language that balanced discretion with necessity. It reveals how everyday objects and actions could be transformed into meaningful gestures, carrying messages deeper than spoken words could safely travel. The humble crumb ring also hints at the challenges of navigating trust within the complex hierarchy of a medieval household. Pages, cooks, stewards, and chambermaids often found themselves as silent witnesses or reluctant participants in the intrigues of their lords and ladies. To manage this, they relied on codes and signals that preserved both loyalty and safety. Imagine the cautious glances exchanged, the careful positioning of crumbs, the shared understanding that even the smallest sign could protect a reputation or prevent harm. Sensory details enrich this image. The rough texture of the wooden table beneath the scattered crumbs, the faint warmth of freshly baked bread still lingering in the room, the soft murmur of voices just beyond the door. The ring forms a gentle barrier in this space, not a barrier of walls or locks, but one of respect and mutual trust. The crumbs, fragile and fleeting, echo the delicate nature of the secrets they protect. Over time, such rituals contributed to the social fabric of the household, helping to maintain order amid uncertainty. They allowed for private discourse even in crowded spaces and served as a reminder that not all knowledge was meant for every ear. Imagine how this practice would shape the daily lives of those who lived within these walls, offering a measure of control and confidence in a world often defined by strict hierarchy and limited freedom. In the quiet aftermath of a conversation marked by crumbs, life would continue its steady flow, meals prepared, tasks completed, voices raised in laughter or song. Yet beneath this familiar surface, the ring remained, a silent sentinel guarding the fragile trust shared among those who knew its meaning. It reminds us that in the smallest acts, even the scattered remnants of bread, there can be profound expressions of human connection, secrecy, and respect. Imagine carrying this knowledge with you, feeling the gentle weight of such subtle signs in the ebb and flow of daily life long past. The ring of breadcrumbs speaks softly across centuries, a whisper of discretion, a trace of confidence, and a testament to the enduring power of silent communication in the rhythm of history. Wearing a laurel leaf behind the ear as a sign of loyalty, imagine yourself walking softly through the cool, shadowed corridors of a stately palace, where every stone and tapestry carries the weight of centuries. Amid the muted sounds, the quiet footsteps of servants, the distant murmur of voices, the smallest details speak volumes about loyalty, trust, and the delicate balances of power. One such detail, subtle yet profoundly meaningful, was the simple act of tucking a fresh laurel leaf behind the ear. This modest adornment was never merely decorative. In many noble households and palatial settings, a laurel leaf placed just so, nestled behind the servant's ear, was a silent badge of personal loyalty. It marked someone who had pledged more than the routine obligations of their position. It identified a trusted individual, chosen to bear confidences and carry messages that no one else could be entrusted with. The leaf, green and vibrant, became a symbol that spoke of discretion, allegiance, and a bond beyond the formal hierarchy. Imagine the delicate texture of that laurel leaf, smooth, yet with faint veins running like whispered secrets along its surface. The faint, fresh scent of the leaf mingled with the air, a quiet, natural fragrance that went unnoticed by most but was understood by those attuned to its meaning. To outsiders, it might seem a small flourish or a quaint habit, yet to those within the palace walls, it was a potent sign, a living emblem of trust. The symbolism of the laurel stretches back to antiquity, long before medieval or Renaissance courts adopted it. Laurels were associated with honor, victory, and sacred promise. In classical times, poets, warriors, and leaders alike wore laurel wreaths as crowns of achievement and respect. This ancient heritage infused the leaf with layers of significance, lending even a single sprig a weight that extended beyond its humble size. Within the palace, the laurel behind the ear became an unspoken language, a discreet code that safeguarded the most sensitive of communications. When a servant bore this symbol, they were often the invisible thread connecting one chamber to another, carrying words meant only for certain ears. They moved through shadowed hallways and ornate chambers with a purpose that transcended chores and menial tasks. The leaf marked them as both messenger and guardian of secrets. Imagine how this subtle sign influenced the rhythm of the servant's day. The knowledge of such trust brought with it a quiet responsibility, a weight that shaped each gesture and glance. Loyalty here was not simply a matter of duty, it was a pact sealed by confidence and often fraught with the tension of discretion. The bearer knew that one misstep could unravel delicate alliances or disrupt the balance of power. Yet, despite this gravitas, life continued in its varied pace. The clinking of fine china, the rustle of rich fabrics, the murmur of conversations both public and private. The laurel leaf, quietly tucked behind the ear, was a steady pulse within this complex choreography, a reminder that beneath the grandeur lay a network of trust and vigilance. This practice also reveals much about the social structures of the time. Formal roles were rigid and defined, yet personal loyalty carved spaces beyond official titles. The leaf symbolized that blurred line, where service met intimacy and duty intersected with secrecy. It was a gesture that acknowledged the human element within the vast machinery of palace life. Picture the fleeting moments when a servant might touch the laurel, adjusting its position with a careful hand, conscious of the eyes that might be watching, both protective and probing. In these small acts, the weight of allegiance was tangible, quietly shaping the servant's identity and place within the household. As you imagine the scene, sense the layered sounds and smells of the palace, the faint echo of footsteps on polished stone, the soft fragrance of fresh herbs in the air, the gentle rustle of tapestries stirred by passing figures. Within this atmosphere, the laurel leaf is a beacon of trust, a silent yet powerful token amid the shifting currents of loyalty and power. The leaf also reminds us that history often communicates through symbols and gestures, where the smallest detail can carry the deepest meaning. It teaches us to listen closely, not just to words, but to the quiet signs woven into daily life, the coded messages tucked behind ears, in the folds of clothing, or in the rhythm of a glance. So, as you picture this simple leaf resting behind the ear, remember it as more than nature's adornment. It was a symbol that connected hearts and minds, a living emblem of loyalty that spoke volumes in silence, quietly shaping the unseen fabric of palace life. Setting a candle stub upright to indicate payment was due, imagine yourself in the quiet corner of a medieval household's bustling service wing, where the low glow of flickering candles barely pushes back the evening shadows. The air carries the mingled sense of beeswax, smoke, and aged wood, a humble atmosphere where small acts spoke volumes. Among these acts was one as simple as setting a spent candle stub upright on a ledge. Yet, this modest gesture was a carefully crafted signal, a delicate note within the unspoken language of servants, quietly announcing that payment was due or supplies needed without a single word uttered. In the tightly woven social fabric of a medieval manor, direct requests from servants to their masters or stewards were often fraught with risk. To speak openly about wages or provisions could be seen as impertinent, challenging the strict hierarchy that governed every interaction. Imagine the servant's hesitation, caught between necessity and decorum, aware that even the tone of a voice might invite disfavor. Instead, the upright candle stub served as a subtle prompt, a silent signal designed to communicate needs discreetly yet unmistakably. Picture the candle itself, a short, worn remnant of wax, its wick long spent but its shape intact. Placed carefully on a wooden ledge, perhaps near a cupboard door or the edge of a service table, this upright stub became a quiet ambassador for the servant's unspoken request. It was neither bold nor demanding. Rather, it fit perfectly within the household's rhythms, allowing communication to flow gently beneath the surface of conversation and command. This practice reflects the nuanced balance of power and respect that defined medieval domestic life. Servants navigated a world where authority was absolute, yet survival depended on subtlety and discretion. The upright candle was more than a marker. It was a symbol of patience and tact, a way to assert needs while honoring the unyielding social order. Imagine the household staff, eyes trained to notice such signs, recognizing the gesture and responding in kind, ensuring that wages were delivered or supplies replenished without public confrontation. Beyond its practical function, the candle stub carried with it a sense of shared understanding and silent cooperation. It was part of a larger tapestry of signals woven throughout the manor, from folded linens to positioned utensils, each element a note in the quiet symphony of service. This code allowed the household to function smoothly, maintaining the delicate equilibrium between authority and the daily needs of those who sustained it. The candle's soft glow, now extinguished, remained a beacon of communication. Imagine how, in dimly lit chambers, such small tokens guided interactions with gentle clarity. They bridged the divide between spoken command and silent necessity, preserving dignity for both giver and receiver. This was a world where power was expressed not only in grand gestures but in the minutiae of daily ritual, where a candle stub upright could carry the weight of livelihoods and trust. Reflecting on this practice invites us to consider the complexity beneath seemingly simple acts. The upright candle stub was a quiet negotiation, a way for servants to make their presence felt, to remind without demanding, to ask without risking reproach. In this balance lay survival and respect, woven together by gestures as subtle as the flicker of a flame. Imagine, too, the passage of time as these candles burned down, their stubs set upright again and again, marking countless requests across seasons and years. Each one a whisper in the long story of household life, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of those who labored unseen. The candle stub, humble and silent, endures as a symbol of communication born not from words but from shared understanding and unspoken agreements. So, as you picture this small act, placing a spent candle upright on a ledge, consider the depth of meaning it carried. It was a gesture of necessity, of respect, and of quiet assertion. In the dim light of medieval service, this simple ritual illuminated the complex dance of duty and dignity, weaving together the rhythms of survival and the subtle language of requests that kept a household whole. Placing a single pine cone on a table to show a guest was trusted, imagine yourself entering a quiet, warmly lit room, where the air carries the subtle scent of wood smoke and aged parchment. At the center of a polished wooden table, a single pine cone rests carefully placed before an invited guest. This humble object, natural and unadorned, holds a powerful meaning, an unspoken assurance of trust and favor within the circle gathered there. Throughout history, symbolic gestures have quietly conveyed complex social codes, creating layers of meaning in everyday actions. The act of placing a pine cone before a guest's seat was one such gesture, a subtle but deliberate sign signaling that the visitor was welcome to speak openly and honestly. It was a mark of security, a guarantee that words spoken in this space would remain guarded and respected. Consider the setting in which such a token might appear: a gathering in a manor house, a council chamber, or a private parlor, where delicate matters of alliance, negotiation, or confession might be discussed. The atmosphere is composed, voices low, the flickering candlelight casting soft shadows on stone walls. In such a place, trust was not given lightly. The pine cone was a quiet pledge, a promise that no ear outside this circle would carry away the secrets shared here. This symbolism draws deeply from the natural world and ancient associations. Pine cones, as seed-bearing structures of evergreen trees, embody endurance, renewal, and protection. Their tough scales shield the potential for new life within, a metaphor for safeguarding what is precious and vulnerable. Just as the cone protects its seeds, the host's gesture with the pine cone protected the guest's confidence. Imagine the guest's perspective, arriving at the table, noticing the pine cone placed deliberately before them. It is not a decoration nor a mere curiosity, but a sign loaded with significance. It reassures the guest that their words will not be repeated or twisted, that the company present honors discretion. In a time when alliances could shift with a whisper and betrayal lurked in shadows, such reassurance was invaluable. This small ritual also reinforced social bonds and hierarchies. By granting the pine cone's symbolic trust, hosts elevated their guests' standing, signaling favor and inclusion. It was a mark of respect, affirming that the guest's presence was valued not just socially but as a participant in matters requiring confidence and honor. The presence of the pine cone further created a shared understanding among all present. Those seated around the table recognized the weight of this symbol. It tempered their conduct, reminding them of the sacredness of trust and the unspoken rule to guard the guest's words carefully. In this way, the pine cone acted as a silent overseer, weaving an invisible web of loyalty and discretion through the gathering. In broader cultural contexts, evergreen trees and their cones have long been intertwined with ideas of immortality, steadfastness, and wisdom. Many traditions use them as talismans against misfortune or as signs of spiritual protection. Incorporating such a natural emblem into social etiquette layered the act with a sense of solemnity and ancient wisdom, grounding the modern interaction in timeless values. Picture the table as a microcosm of society's delicate dance of trust and power. The pine cone resting there is an anchor amid shifting alliances and fragile promises. It is a beacon of quiet assurance amid the uncertainty of human relations, a way to hold space for honesty and respect. As conversations unfold, the pine cone silently witnesses the exchange of thoughts, confidences, and intentions. It remains still, unchanging, a natural emblem anchoring the gathering's integrity. Its presence invites calm, a reminder that within these walls, trust is both given and guarded. Imagine the guest rising to leave, casting one last glance at the pine cone, a simple yet profound token of the security they were granted. This small, organic symbol, often overlooked by the untrained eye, has carried centuries of meaning. A quiet promise that words spoken here will be held safe, and that trust, once given, is not to be broken. In this way, the pine cone on the table transcends its humble origin, becoming a powerful language of trust and honor. It invites us to remember the subtle ways history has woven respect and discretion into the fabric of human connection, teaching us that sometimes the smallest gestures speak the loudest truths. Dusting a threshold twice to warn of listening ears. Imagine yourself standing just beyond a doorway in a grand medieval household, where every sound and gesture carries weight, and silence often speaks louder than words. The air is thick with subtle tension, the faint scent of aged wood mingling with soft whispers carried through hidden corridors. In such places, privacy was a precious commodity, fiercely guarded but also fragile, threatened by hidden eyes and ears lurking in shadows. Within this delicate balance, an unusual but meaningful practice emerged, dusting a threshold twice as a silent warning. To the casual visitor, a quick sweep of the floor might seem merely an act of cleanliness or habit. Yet, among the servants and trusted insiders, this deliberate double sweep was a discreet signal, a wordless caution to those about to cross that listening ears might be nearby. This practice was not merely a matter of convenience, but an essential element of survival within a world where secrets mattered deeply. Imagine the servant, freshly taught by an elder, sweeping the doorway twice with a practiced hand. The first sweep clears the dust, the second deliberate brush conveys a hidden message. This ritual, passed down quietly from one generation to the next, became a shared language among those who served behind the scenes. To dust a threshold twice was to say, without uttering a single word, "Be wary, the walls have ears." It prepared those entering to temper their speech, to guard confidences, and to tread lightly in conversations where loyalty and discretion were paramount. It was a shield woven from silence, a precaution against betrayal or inadvertent exposure. Imagine the many reasons such a warning would be necessary. Noble households were often rife with intrigue, where political maneuvering, private alliances, and whispered rumors shaped destinies. Guests and family members alike might be watched or overheard, their words picked apart by unseen listeners eager to exploit vulnerabilities. The double dusting was a small but vital act to preserve trust and caution in these precarious social webs. This tradition also reveals the intimate mentorship within servant communities. Knowledge of these silent codes was not written down in manuals but transmitted through close apprenticeships. A young servant, learning the rhythms and rituals of the household, would be quietly instructed in the meaning behind a double sweep, an unspoken rule etched in dust and gesture. Such silent warnings were part of a broader culture of nonverbal communication, essential in environments where spoken words could carry risk. Like the folded towel or the upright broom, the double sweep of dust transformed a simple chore into a meaningful signal, blending the practical with the symbolic. Picture the textures and sounds of this subtle act. The soft brush of broom bristles gliding twice over worn stone or wooden thresholds, the faint trail of displaced dust drifting into the air, the quiet glance exchanged between servants aware of the message. This moment of shared understanding fosters a sense of connection and vigilance, a reminder that even in silence, communication thrives. Beyond its practical use, this custom speaks to the complexities of trust and caution in historical households. It illustrates how privacy was negotiated not only through walls and doors but through gestures and rituals, carefully orchestrated to maintain control over what was heard and by whom. The double dusting also reminds us that history is often shaped by these subtle interactions. Small acts that might escape notice but hold profound significance for those who understand them. It invites reflection on the layers of meaning hidden in daily routines and the silent languages that helped preserve dignity and safety in precarious times. In this way, sweeping a doorway twice becomes more than housekeeping. It is a quiet sentinel guarding secrets, a gentle caution echoing through generations. It is a testament to the ingenuity of those who navigated delicate social landscapes with grace and discretion, speaking volumes through the soft whisper of dust on stone. Carrying a jug with a woven handle to mark a secret meeting, imagine yourself walking through the stone-paved courtyards and shadowed passages of a medieval estate, where the air carries a mingling of earth, smoke from distant hearths, and the faint scent of herbs drying in wooden racks. In this everyday scene, you might notice a figure moving steadily along. A servant or page clutching a simple jug, but not just any ordinary vessel. This jug is wrapped carefully in a woven sleeve, crafted from sturdy reeds or braided fibers, a humble yet meaningful covering that transforms it from a mere container into a silent emblem of secrecy. In the intricate social dance of medieval households and communities, where trust was scarce and the cost of overheard words could be high, such coded objects played a crucial role. A jug swathed in a woven handle or sleeve was a recognized sign that its bearer was on the way to a private, confidential meeting, a discussion reserved for trusted individuals behind closed doors. This was not a casual errand but a purposeful journey, marked by this subtle but unmistakable symbol. Imagine the gentle texture of the woven sleeve beneath the bearer's hand, the slight roughness of natural fibers against skin, the muted creak of the jug shifting as it is carried. The covering did more than protect the vessel from damage. It cloaked the object's purpose, signaling to those attuned that something discreet was underway. To watchful eyes in the household or community, fellow servants, guards, or allies, the jug's woven sheath was a respectful cue to avert their gaze, to allow passage without question or interference. This practice reveals much about the rhythms and constraints of medieval communication, where spoken words were often too risky to carry openly, and written messages could be intercepted or misunderstood. Physical signs and objects took on the weight of language, transmitting meaning through shared understanding rather than explicit explanation. The jug with its woven cover was a quiet ambassador of confidentiality, moving steadily through corridors and alleys, bearing its unseen message without fanfare. Consider the craftsmanship involved in the woven handle or sleeve itself. Made by skilled hands, weaving natural materials into patterns both functional and beautiful, these coverings reflected a blend of practicality and symbolism. Their design ensured a secure grip, while also marking the vessel as distinct, a visual code recognizable to those in the inner circle. Imagine the patience and care of the artisan who braided reeds or rushes, transforming humble strands into a meaningful emblem of trust and discretion. The bearer of such a jug carried more than water, wine, or oil. They carried trust, responsibility, and sometimes the weight of political or familial intrigue. The journey might be short, just across the hall or courtyard, or longer, to a secluded chamber or a distant outbuilding. Regardless of distance, the woven jug spoke of purpose and secrecy, a tangible reminder that not all movements within a household were mundane or routine. The social etiquette surrounding this signal was precise and widely understood. Anyone encountering the bearer would recognize the woven sleeve and respond with silence or respectful withdrawal, avoiding questions or casual conversation. Imagine a guard lowering his gaze, a servant pausing in mid-step, the usual buzz of the household dimming slightly as the jug passed. This unspoken agreement maintained the delicate balance of privacy in a world where information was both currency and weapon. This ritual also highlights the layered nature of medieval life, where even the simplest objects carried multiple meanings depending on context. The jug, everyday and unassuming, became a vessel not only for liquid but for subtle communication, a symbol woven into the fabric of social interaction. Imagine how many confidential discussions, alliances formed, or disputes settled began with the quiet passage of such a covered jug. Sensory details bring this scene to life, the faint warmth radiating from the jug's contents, the soft rustle of the woven fibers against coarse linen sleeves, the muffled footsteps on flagstones, and the distant murmur of voices behind heavy wooden doors. Each element contributes to a tableau of secrecy and trust, where ordinary objects become vessels of hidden significance. Over time, these silent symbols wove themselves into the daily fabric of medieval households and communities, a testament to the human need for discretion and subtlety. The jug wrapped in a woven handle reminds us that communication is as much about what is left unsaid as what is spoken, that trust often travels in quiet, tangible forms, and that respect for privacy has long been guarded with care. Imagine carrying that jug yourself, feeling the woven grip steady in your hands, knowing that you are part of a delicate web of trust and secrecy. The jug moves through the corridors of history as a humble but powerful emblem, an invitation to look closer, to listen more deeply, and to appreciate the quiet codes that once guided lives lived in the shadows of stone walls and whispered words. Wearing a crimson cord on the wrist to denote silent protest, imagine yourself standing in the shadowed courtyard of a large estate, where the steady cadence of daily labor hums softly beneath the weight of unspoken tensions. Among the rows of stone walls and fluttering banners, subtle signs of resistance pulse quietly beneath the surface of orderly life. One such sign was the simple, yet deeply charged, crimson cord tied gently around a servant's wrist. This slender band of red was more than a mere accessory, it was a silent emblem of dissent. In a world where open protest could bring swift and severe consequences, servants found ways to voice their discontent without uttering a single word. The crimson cord became their quiet rebellion, a discreet signal worn with care and determination. Its color, vivid and unmistakable, carried the weight of emotion and defiance, a small yet potent banner against injustice. Imagine the texture of the cord itself, soft yet firm, woven tightly from threads dyed with deep, natural reds. It wraps snugly around the wrist, a constant presence felt with every movement, a quiet reminder of solidarity shared among those who dared to resist silently. To the untrained eye, it might appear as a simple piece of cloth, but to those in the know, it was a profound declaration. The choice of red was no accident. Throughout history, red has symbolized passion, courage, and sacrifice. It is the color of vitality and warning, a universal sign that draws attention even in the midst of silence. For servants, tying a crimson cord was a way to claim space in a world where their voices were often muted or ignored. This form of silent protest spread rapidly through the ranks, often more swiftly than spoken words or whispered rumors. Like a ripple through still water, the sight of a red cord on one wrist could inspire others to follow suit, creating a subtle yet powerful network of solidarity. In the quiet spaces between orders and duties, these cords linked individuals in a shared, unspoken understanding, a communal pulse of resistance beating beneath the surface of everyday life. Imagine the scenes where this quiet rebellion took shape. The communal kitchens, the cold stone stairways, the cramped quarters where servants gathered in fleeting moments of privacy, all became stages for this symbolic act. The crimson cord was visible during long hours of toil, a badge worn discreetly but with pride. This gesture speaks volumes about the lived experience of those who served in hierarchical households. Their lives were often constrained by rigid expectations, yet even within these confines, the human spirit found ways to assert itself. The crimson cord embodies the tension between obedience and autonomy, a silent assertion of agency in a world where open defiance could be perilous. Consider how this quiet symbol influenced the daily rhythm of the servants' lives. Each glance at the wrist, each subtle exchange of knowing looks, reinforced a sense of connection and shared purpose. The cord became a source of strength, a reminder that, even in silence, their dissent was real and present. The crimson cord also reveals the layers of communication woven through social structures. Without words, without raised voices, a simple piece of cloth conveyed a message potent enough to unify and inspire. It transformed an ordinary body into a bearer of quiet protest, a walking emblem of resilience. As you imagine this, picture the faint sheen of the cord against skin weathered by work, the way it catches the light in dim halls, the slight movement with every gesture, a subtle but constant presence. The red thread threads its way through the fabric of daily life, a quiet thread of resistance among countless others. In this, we see how history often speaks through the smallest signs, the codes and symbols born of necessity, woven into the daily lives of those who lived it. The crimson cord is a testament to human creativity and courage in the face of adversity, a reminder that even the most restrained voices find ways to be heard. So, as you picture that slender cord wrapped gently around a wrist, know that it carries a story of quiet defiance and solidarity. A small, glowing ember of protest that warmed the hearts of those who dared to hope for change, even in the silence. Crossing spoons on a serving platter to indicate a dish was poisoned, imagine yourself in the dimly lit great hall of a medieval manor, where shadows flicker against stone walls and the scent of roasted meats and fresh bread hangs in the heavy air. At the center of this space, a grand wooden table bears an array of dishes, each prepared with care yet shadowed by unseen dangers. Among the household staff, a silent, grave warning moves through the servants' ranks, a message conveyed not by words, but by the deliberate crossing of spoons atop a serving platter. This simple gesture, 2 spoons crossed in an X, carried a weight far heavier than its humble appearance suggested. In times of uncertainty and peril, when alliances shifted like quicksand and suspicion was a constant companion, the crossed spoons served as a covert alert. It was a warning that a particular dish had been poisoned or was otherwise unsafe, a signal meant to protect those who would eat but without naming or accusing any noble or guest directly. Picture the servant who first discovers the danger, perhaps alerted by a whispered rumor, a sudden illness, or a subtle clue left behind. Speaking openly could invite peril, so instead, the servant places 2 spoons in careful cross formation atop the offending dish. This silent code allowed protection to ripple through the household quietly, avoiding scandal while safeguarding lives. The crossing of spoons was understood among the staff as a solemn sign, a shared secret binding them in cautious vigilance. Within the complex hierarchy of a medieval household, direct accusations carried grave risks. Nobles guarded their honor jealously, and servants lived precariously on the edge of favor and suspicion. The crossed spoons became a tool for subtle resistance and protection, a way to navigate the treacherous waters of intrigue without endangering oneself. Imagine the hush that falls among those who recognize the sign, a moment of tension balanced by the relief of knowing danger has been averted. This practice also reveals much about the social dynamics at play. The household was a microcosm of broader medieval society, where power, loyalty, and fear intermingled. The crossed spoons were a language of survival, a quiet assertion of agency by those often voiceless. It was a way for servants to care for each other and for their charges without challenging the outward order, maintaining discretion amid potential chaos. Visualize the platter once more, gleaming wood or polished metal, the spoons resting carefully in their X shape, a stark contrast to the richness of the food beneath. The subtle geometry of the crossed utensils transformed an ordinary object into a symbol heavy with meaning, a warning laid bare yet concealed within everyday life. This ritual also speaks to the broader culture of coded signals in medieval service. From folded towels to arranged tableware, servants developed intricate systems to communicate sensitive information silently. These signs ensured that the household could function despite undercurrents of tension, providing safety nets woven from discretion and mutual understanding. As you let your mind wander through this scene, consider the courage behind such a gesture. To cross those spoons was to acknowledge a hidden threat, to stand as a quiet guardian amid uncertain times. It was a plea for vigilance wrapped in the language of subtlety, a message that could mean the difference between harm and safety. Over time, these silent warnings became part of the fabric of household life. They remind us that even in moments of danger, human ingenuity and solidarity find expression in the smallest details. The crossed spoons, humble yet profound, speak across centuries as a testament to the power of quiet signals and the invisible bonds that protect us. So, imagine yourself once again before that serving platter, noticing the crossed spoons resting gently atop a dish. In their intersection lies a solemn warning, a silent guardian's call, a reminder that beneath the grandeur and ceremony of medieval life, a delicate dance of trust and caution unfolded, carried in gestures as simple as spoons crossed in quiet defiance against unseen threats. Placing a small pebble in a shoe to show readiness to flee. Imagine yourself in the quiet, shadowed corners of a bustling household, where every small detail can hold a secret meaning. Among the ordinary objects, a worn slipper resting near the hearth, its soft fabric touched by the days wear, lies a tiny pebble tucked discreetly into the heel. This simple stone, unassuming and silent, carries a weight far beyond its size. It is a hidden signal, a sign that its wearer is ready to vanish without warning, poised to flee at the faintest hint of danger. In eras when the threat of sudden arrest or violence hung like a persistent cloud, subtle warnings and secret preparations were woven into daily life. Servants, often caught between the worlds of power and vulnerability, developed their own discreet codes to communicate readiness and caution without attracting unwanted attention. The pebble placed inside a shoe was one such code, a private, tactile reminder that escape must always be possible, that safety might depend on speed and silence. Consider the slipper itself, soft-soled and well-worn, designed for quiet steps within the household. The addition of a pebble alters this familiar object in an almost imperceptible way. To an outsider, the shoe appears unchanged, carrying the expected comfort and ease. Yet to the wearer, the pebble's presence is a constant, sharp awareness beneath the foot, a subtle, physical prompt that vigilance must be maintained. The placement of the pebble was more than mere practicality. It was a ritual of readiness, a psychological anchor grounding the wearer in a state of alertness. Each step carried a reminder: the world beyond these walls could shift swiftly from order to chaos. The pebble embodied the tension between normalcy and danger, a quiet talisman that balance might be lost at any moment. Imagine the servant moving through the household's corridors, the pebble cushioned but unmistakable beneath the heel. Their mind navigates the familiar routines while holding space for the possibility of flight. Perhaps news of unrest or a feared visitor had spread in hushed whispers. Perhaps secret loyalties made their position precarious. The pebble is a tool of survival, small, silent, and always present. This practice highlights the precarious position of servants and lower-status individuals in volatile times. Their lives often depended on discretion and the ability to disappear swiftly. The pebble in the shoe code was a discreet way to communicate both to oneself and to others in the know. Readiness to flee is a necessity, not a choice. In a broader sense, the pebble carries symbolic weight. Stones have long represented endurance, permanence, but also obstacles and challenges. Here, the pebble is paradoxically a symbol of transience, an anchor that reminds the wearer that departure must be swift and inevitable. It is the weight that propels movement, the small burden that ensures survival. Picture a moment when the household's atmosphere shifts suddenly, a raised voice beyond a closed door, footsteps echoing unexpectedly, or the glimpse of a uniformed figure. The servant's foot, weighted by the pebble, is already poised to move, already prepared to slip into shadows and disappear. The pebble, silent and steady, plays its role in this unfolding drama, unseen by those unaware of its meaning. This subtle signal also formed part of a hidden language among servants and allies, a network of coded gestures and objects that allowed communication without words. In a world where open speech could be dangerous, such tactile signals were invaluable, an intimate system of alerts and reassurances. As you imagine this scene, consider how the pebble's quiet presence contrasts with the urgent need it represents. It is both a burden and a blessing, a constant reminder of vulnerability and the necessity of swift action. The pebble's weight grounds the wearer in a reality where safety is fragile and fleeting. In this way, the small pebble tucked into a slipper heel becomes more than a simple object. It is a testament to human resilience, a whisper of readiness in the face of uncertainty. It reminds us that history is shaped not only by grand events but by the small, secret acts that carry survival forward, hidden in plain sight, felt beneath the footstep, and understood only by those who live in the shadows of danger. Wearing an unadorned iron ring as a sign of indebtedness, imagine yourself observing a modest hand resting quietly on a wooden table in a dimly lit chamber. Around the finger is a simple iron ring, unadorned, unpolished, heavy with meaning. To the casual eye, it might seem a mere piece of metal, but within the intricate social tapestries of medieval and early modern households, this iron band was a powerful symbol, a sign of indebtedness, allegiance, and silent obligation. The wearing of an unadorned iron ring marked a servant who owed a debt, whether of loyalty, favor, or unfulfilled promise, that could be called upon at any moment. This was not a decorative accessory or a token of vanity, it was a badge of duty, a constant reminder of bonds that tied one person to another beyond spoken contracts or written agreements. Imagine the texture of the iron against the skin, cool, firm, unyielding. The ring's weight was both physical and symbolic, pressing gently but persistently as a reminder of the invisible chains that linked servant and master. Unlike gold or silver, iron was humble, stark, and durable, perfectly suited to convey the serious nature of this indebtedness. This custom arose from the layered social hierarchies that defined lives within noble estates and urban households. Servants, artisans, and laborers might find themselves bound not only by employment but by intricate networks of favors and obligations. The iron ring was a visible sign to others within the household and community that the wearer's allegiance was pledged, sometimes willingly, sometimes out of necessity. Such a ring might be given at the conclusion of a debt, monetary, personal, or social, serving as a pledge that the wearer could be called upon in times of need. It was a silent contract, demanding readiness to act, to serve, or to repay in kind. The ring did not boast status, rather, it marked responsibility and restraint. Imagine the lives of those who bore these rings. Their days woven with quiet service, their actions guided by the invisible promise clasped tightly on their finger. The ring might restrict choices, weighing on personal freedom, yet it also bestowed a certain recognition within the household. A known position, a defined role that could carry both hardship and a subtle kind of power. The iron ring thus straddled a paradox. It was both burden and badge, a symbol of constraint and connection. It communicated to others a readiness to fulfill obligations and a visible tie to a social network that extended beyond mere employment. In communities where trust and loyalty were currencies as vital as gold, this ring was a constant emblem of those exchanges. Consider the quiet moments when the wearer glanced down at the iron band, its rough surface worn smooth by years of daily life, and remembered the silent promise it represented. Perhaps it was a source of pride, a mark of honor to be called upon and trusted. Or perhaps it was a reminder of debts unpaid and freedoms limited, a steady weight felt with every gesture. This tradition also reflects the nuanced ways in which material culture encoded social relationships. Objects like the iron ring communicated complex statuses without words or public declarations. They allowed households to maintain delicate balances of power and loyalty, visible enough to be recognized, subtle enough to avoid public scrutiny. Picture the environment where this custom thrived. The cool stone walls of a manor house, the muted light filtering through stained glass, the soft murmur of servants moving about. In such a setting, the unadorned iron ring was a silent actor in the daily drama of allegiance and obligation. Ultimately, the iron ring worn on the hand reminds us that history often dwells in the small and understated. It is found not only in grand declarations or written edicts but in the simple metal bands encircling fingers, signs of human connections, promises, and the quiet burdens carried from one day to the next. So, imagine the subtle glint of iron catching the light as a servant moves through the halls, a constant yet unspoken emblem of debt and duty. It is a reminder that behind the polished facades of noble life were complex webs of allegiance, held together by symbols both seen and unseen, whispered through the language of iron. Leaning a broom across a threshold to signal closure, imagine yourself standing before the heavy wooden door of a chamber within a medieval household or a humble village cottage, the air thick with the mingled scents of wood smoke, herbs, and damp earth. Across the threshold, a simple broom leans quietly, its worn bristles resting firmly against the floor, its handle angled to block the passage. This unassuming tool, commonplace in every home and hall, serves a purpose far beyond sweeping. Here, it is a silent sentinel signaling that the room beyond is closed to outsiders. In the everyday life of medieval communities, Where privacy was rare and social boundaries rigid, such subtle gestures held great meaning. The broom, carefully placed across a doorway, was universally understood as a sign that the chamber was sealed, reserved for private affairs, secret gatherings, or moments requiring discretion. No casual visitor or curious passerby would dare cross this humble barrier without permission, and only the most trusted, and with the utmost caution, might step beyond it. Imagine the texture of the broom's worn handle, smoothed by years of use, the sturdy bristles that had swept countless floors now repurposed as a symbol of closure. The act of leaning the broom was deliberate and unhurried, a ritual in itself, a quiet declaration that whatever lay beyond was not open to all. The broom's presence transformed a mere threshold into a guarded boundary, a line between public space and the sanctity of privacy. This practice speaks to the rhythms of life in times when communication often relied on silent signals rather than spoken commands. In a world without locks on every door or modern privacy conventions, households and communities developed codes understood by all. The broom blocking a doorway was one such code, a physical marker that conveyed respect for boundaries and an unspoken request for discretion. Picture the scene. A servant finishes her tasks in the room, then carefully places the broom across the entrance before quietly stepping away. The light from a nearby window catches the broom's worn fibers, casting gentle shadows on the stone floor. Those who approach see the barrier and understand immediately this space is off-limits. Footsteps slow, voices lower, and the hum of daily activity continues around the perimeter of this closed-off chamber. The significance of this gesture extends beyond mere household management. It reflects the social dynamics of trust and exclusion, where access to certain spaces and information was tightly controlled. Only those within the inner circle, trusted family members, close servants, or confidants, might pass the broom's barrier, and even then, with measured care. This silent permission was a mark of honor and responsibility. Such a signal also carried a practical function. In times of illness, mourning, or confidential discussion, the broom's presence warned others to keep away, preventing disruption or inadvertent intrusion. Imagine the cautious steps of a trusted attendant crossing the threshold, mindful of the boundary the broom represented, entering a world temporarily sealed off from the bustle beyond. This quiet practice is part of a broader tradition of nonverbal communication woven into the fabric of medieval life. Like a folded towel silently summoning a noble or a lit lantern warning of danger, the broom across the doorway spoke volumes without uttering a word. These signals maintained order, preserved secrecy, and fostered respect within complex social hierarchies. Sensory details deepen this picture. The faint creak of wood as the broom shifts slightly, the muffled voices behind the closed door, the subtle coolness of the threshold stone beneath the broom's bristles. Each element contributes to an atmosphere of guarded calm, where silence itself carries weight. In time, this custom became a small but essential part of household etiquette and community interaction, teaching all to honor the invisible lines that protect privacy and trust. Imagine the quiet power held by such a simple tool, repurposed into a guardian of secrets and a keeper of boundaries. As you envision this scene, consider the lessons it holds about communication, respect, and the subtle art of signaling in human relationships. The broom leaning quietly across the threshold is more than a barrier. It is a testament to the ways people have long navigated privacy and protection, using everyday objects to speak quietly but clearly. Imagine yourself pausing before that doorway, seeing the broom's angle and knowing that what lies beyond is a space set apart. A chamber sealed not by walls alone, but by understanding, trust, and the unspoken agreements that shape the rhythm of life. Scattering flower petals in a corridor to show celebration, imagine yourself walking down a long, polished corridor deep within a grand palace. The stone floor gleams softly in the filtered light streaming through tall, arched windows. Along this passageway, something catches your eye, a delicate carpet of flower petals scattered gently across the path. Their colors blend softly, pale pinks, creamy whites, touches of lavender, forming a subtle, fragrant trail that leads onward. This scattering of petals was no random decoration but a carefully crafted gesture of celebration. Within the often solemn and meticulously ordered world of palace life, open expressions of joy were measured and restrained. Loud festivities or boisterous displays could easily disturb the delicate balance of hierarchy and decorum. So, instead, flower petals quietly announced moments of happiness: the birth of a noble child, the engagement of a cherished couple, or the triumph of a well-fought victory. Imagine the soft, muted sound of footsteps brushing over the petals, releasing a faint, sweet fragrance into the air. The delicate crunch and rustle underfoot is a gentle reminder of something special, an invisible thread connecting those who understood the message without the need for spoken words. The petals softened the footsteps of those who walked there, cushioning the path and lending a sense of grace to the moment. This tradition offered a quiet way for the palace community to acknowledge important milestones while maintaining the solemn order that governed their lives. It allowed joy to bloom subtly, like the petals themselves, without overwhelming the formality that structured daily routines. Picture the hands that arranged the petals, their fingers careful and deliberate, choosing the freshest blooms from garden baskets, their scent mingling with the faint aroma of polished wood and stone. The servants responsible for this task performed it with a sense of reverence, knowing that each petal played a part in the palace's unspoken language of celebration. The scattering of petals also spoke to a deeper human desire to mark passage and change with beauty, to share happiness in ways that respect context and place. In a world often governed by strict rules, this floral gesture was a small act of softness, a reminder that beneath the layers of duty and protocol, life's joyful moments still found their place. As you imagine this scene, sense the layering of the palace's atmosphere, the quiet murmur of distant voices, the occasional clink of fine china from nearby chambers, and the subtle shift in energy that follows such a delicate announcement. The petals do not shout but whisper their message, allowing those attuned to recognize the significance unfolding within these walls. This practice also highlights how gestures, no matter how gentle, carry profound meaning within social structures. The petals connect people across ranks and roles, weaving a shared experience of celebration that transcends words and ceremonies. So, as you picture that corridor, soft with flower petals, think of it as a silent hymn of joy, a fleeting, fragrant pathway that celebrates life's milestones with quiet elegance, inviting all who pass to join in a moment of discreet happiness within the palace's enduring rhythm. Pinning a white cloth to a bedchamber door to request silence, imagine yourself stepping quietly down a dimly lit corridor of a medieval manor, where flickering torchlight casts long shadows on the stone walls. The murmur of voices and clatter of footsteps echo faintly from distant chambers, yet here and there, signs of solemn respect emerge amidst the lively bustle. One such sign is simple yet profound: a pale, white cloth carefully pinned to the door of a bedchamber, a delicate request for silence that speaks volumes without a single uttered word. In the intricate rhythm of household life, where grand feasts and celebrations could fill the air with laughter and noise, moments of quiet were precious. The white cloth served as a gentle, courteous signal, an invitation for hushed footsteps and softened voices. Imagine the hand of a servant fastening this cloth to the heavy wooden door, its pale fabric contrasting softly against dark timber, a silent plea that even the most exuberant festivities would honor. This humble gesture was more than mere decoration. It was a tacit understanding woven into the social fabric of the household. Behind that door might rest a noble recovering from illness, a newborn child slumbering peacefully, or a moment of private reflection sought by one weary of the day's demands. The pinned cloth was a shield, protecting these fragile moments from the encroachment of sound and distraction. Consider the delicate balance this sign maintained. In a world where hierarchy ruled and words could carry weight far beyond their meaning, the white cloth allowed for communication without disruption. Servants, guests, and even the highest-ranking household members recognized its significance, adjusting their behavior with respectful restraint. Imagine the shifting tone in the corridor, the lowering of voices, the softening of footsteps, as the cloth hung quietly as a guardian of peace. This practice also reveals the subtle etiquette governing medieval households. Requests for silence had to be made with grace and discretion, for to disturb a noble or intrude upon private space was to risk offense or punishment. The white cloth became a symbol of polite negotiation, an unspoken contract between those inside and those passing by. It acknowledged human needs, rest, healing, contemplation, amid the constant hum of domestic life. Visualize the texture of that cloth, pale linen or soft cotton, gently swaying with the draft through the corridor, its edges worn smooth by repeated use. It was a simple material transformed by purpose, a tangible expression of care and consideration. To pin the cloth was to weave compassion into the architecture of daily life. Beyond its practical use, this custom underscores the intricate communication network within the household. Like folded towels, candle stubs, or crossed spoons, the white cloth was part of a silent language, an ensemble of signs that shaped interactions with subtlety and respect. These signals allowed the household to function harmoniously, honoring private needs without the disruption of overt requests. As you drift through this scene, imagine the care with which each person observes the sign, acknowledging it not just out of obligation but from a shared understanding of the fragility and dignity it represents. The white cloth invites a pause, a moment of collective empathy amid the flow of activity, reminding all that even in grand homes, quiet moments hold profound value. Over time, such signs became embedded in the customs of service, passed down through generations. They speak to a timeless human truth, that silence can be a gift, and that respect is often shown most clearly in the quietest gestures. So, picture yourself once more walking the corridor, eyes catching the pale cloth pinned gently to the bedchamber door. In that unassuming fabric lies a respectful plea, a tender request for stillness amid the lively dance of daily life, a reminder that sometimes the softest signals carry the deepest meaning. Leaving an unlocked chest lid ajar to invite inspection, imagine yourself stepping into a dimly lit chamber where the flicker of candlelight dances across polished wooden surfaces and shadowed corners. At the heart of this room rests a large, sturdy chest, its lid left deliberately ajar, a silent invitation to explore what lies within. This simple gesture, an open chest, carries a rich and purposeful meaning, a signal of openness, a readiness to share, and an offer of transparency without a single word spoken. Throughout history, the act of leaving a chest lid unlocked and slightly open was more than convenience. It was a deliberate form of communication embedded deeply in social and administrative practices. In times when trust and reputation were paramount, such a gesture spoke volumes, conveying that the owner had nothing to hide and welcomed inspection from peers, superiors, or visitors. Picture the setting where this custom might be observed: a noble's hall, a merchant's study, or a steward's quarters. The chest, often the repository of valuables, important documents, or treasured goods, was typically kept securely locked to guard against theft or suspicion. Yet, when the lid was left open, it flipped that dynamic, transforming the chest from a guarded vault into a transparent display. This openness was a powerful symbol in hierarchical societies where power and suspicion often intertwined. By leaving the chest open, the owner signaled confidence and integrity, inviting scrutiny as proof of honesty. It was an unspoken assurance that accounts were clear, possessions legitimate, and no secrets lay buried beneath the lid. Imagine the visitors who approached such a chest. Their eyes might linger over the exposed contents, stacks of ledgers, bundles of coins, carefully wrapped textiles, or important correspondences. The open lid eased the tension of social encounters, allowing trust to be built through visible evidence rather than guarded words. The practice also functioned as a practical tool in business and governance. Merchants, for example, might leave chests open during meetings or audits to demonstrate financial transparency. Similarly, stewards or administrators responsible for managing estates or goods used this gesture to invite oversight, reinforcing accountability. Beyond its practical use, the open chest carried symbolic weight, reflecting broader cultural values around honesty, trust, and social order. In an age before printed contracts or modern record-keeping, such visible signs were essential in affirming character and reliability. The chest became a stage where integrity could be silently displayed. Imagine the texture of the chest's wooden frame, smooth from years of careful handling, its iron fittings darkened by time and use. The slight gap in the lid allows faint sense from inside, leather, parchment, perhaps the sharp tang of metal coins, to mingle with the room's ambient smells. This sensory detail deepens the sense of immediacy and presence, grounding the abstract concept of transparency in the physical world. This gesture of leaving a chest ajar also fostered a delicate balance between privacy and openness. While the contents were accessible, the act of invitation was controlled and purposeful, not careless exposure. It allowed the owner to demonstrate good faith while maintaining dignity and authority. Imagine how this small, intentional act shaped interactions and perceptions. A chest left open set a tone of welcome and trustworthiness, encouraging open dialogue and collaboration. Conversely, a tightly locked chest might invite suspicion or suggest secrecy, altering the social atmosphere. Through this practice, we glimpse the subtle ways people negotiated power and trust in historical contexts. The open chest reminds us that communication extends far beyond words, often residing in objects and gestures, in the spaces left uncovered, and in the quiet signals sent by everyday actions. As you envision this scene once more, the open chest stands as a symbol of transparency and honor, a silent yet eloquent message woven into the rhythm of daily life. It invites us to reflect on how trust is cultivated, maintained, and expressed, not always through declarations, but through the gentle art of revealing, inviting, and sharing what lies beneath the surface.